Well, I'm here in real life. I'm not just on the screen, although I think there was going to be something on the screen as well, but that's okay. Isn't it awesome to be in a room full of creative people? As a little kid growing up in Launceston, Tasmania, any other Tasmanians in the house? Oh, maybe half of one, kind of. Anyway, I can't say that there was a whole lot of creativity that I saw growing up like I see today. And as a mum and as a teacher and a chaplain, I just love the fact that our kids are growing up in a place where their creativity and their God-given talents are really honoured. And so kids, I'm just so glad that you're here. It's so exciting for me to think about what God is doing in your life. So today, Charmaine invited me to talk about something a little bit exciting because I have a new book out. And it's called Advent for Kids. Thank you. The one person's seen it. So Advent for Kids has just been released this week. Now, for anyone who's ever tried to write a book, it's a process. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today, is the process of how this book came to be. Now, I've been a writer for, I guess about 15 years now, on and off here and there, in between raising kids and working and ministry and all that stuff that happens in life. Now, writing is one of those things, like most creative arts, that actually requires a bit of brain space. It requires a little bit of margin in your life, often. Doesn't mean you can't scribble something down in the 2 seconds while you're waiting in the school pickup line, but it does mean those bigger works, they take time. And time's something that's probably been my hardest thing. And unlike Craig, I haven't been able to quit my job. I did like that suggestion, however. And actually, at the end of the year, I am. So, maybe that was prophetic. But I am a great believer in honouring the gifts and the desire that God's put on your heart. I grew up as a kid who loved to read. I loved to talk. My brothers will tell you that. We were joking one day about what jobs we might have had in medieval days, and he suggested that I would have been the perfect town crier. As only a brother can say. It's all right. I said he might have been the village idiot. So it was fair and square in the end. But I think for me, there is such joy in words. I think as a child, I discovered the power of words when I was really young. Words can change the world. And I 100% believe that. And it doesn't matter whether they're spoken or written or sung. There is something just inherently powerful about words. I trained to be a teacher. And I've been a primary teacher for 25 years, haven't been in the classroom for a couple of years now, but I loved my time. And hats off to all the teachers. Well done, you have survived a really difficult time. And when I was teaching, kids just engage with story. They just love stories. And I think that's because we're all designed to know story and to feel story and to live story, because that's what God has given us. He has expressed his presence, his plan, his purpose through story. And we're wired that way. And I decided when I was in my probably early 20s that I was going to have a go at writing, because I always thought that writers were like magic people who were just sprinkled with fairy dust, and it was only those people who could be writers, because I didn't know anyone who was a writer. And then when I was home in my 30s, when I was home with my kids, I had intellectual space. I didn't have physical space. We had 4 kids in 5.5 years, including a set of twins. So there was no physical space. But my brain was kind of doing the mum thing and that kind of routine and the rhythm of your day. But I was able to think about things a little bit differently. And so I started writing seriously, and I did my own version of an apprenticeship, which was thousands of hours of writing courses, online, blogs, websites, research, trying to work out how do you become a writer? Like, what is the process? And I ended up submitting, and over the period of about 5 years, I had 4 picture books published, which was incredibly rewarding, very exciting. 2 of them were through an Adventist publisher in the UK, but the other 2 were commercials. So I've kind of gone down that playing with the big boys kind of path, which is really, really competitive. And any little win, you celebrate. So that's been an awesome journey. But then I kind of felt like I stagnated. I felt like everything I did, I thought I was writing well, and it wasn't being picked up by anyone. I get great rejections, which is better than bad rejections, but it's still a rejection. So I get great rejections that were like, we love your work, we want to see more, have you got anything else you can send us? And I'd send it and I'd still get, yeah, we love it, but we don't love it enough. So then I started writing longer works, and I've probably got, 15 novels at home on my laptop that are in various stages of development. And again, still didn't get anywhere. I have an agent, and that's as hard as getting a publisher. And I sent her my latest one. I read it to my class when I was last teaching a few years ago in year 6. They ate it up, and I'm like, this is the one. This is the one. I'm going to actually finally crack one of the big 5 publishers. Penguin or Scholastic, Hardy Grant, one of those. She sent it out, not a bite. It's really humbling being a writer, because you put your heart into what you're doing. And I think in most creative things, you actually do the work before you get the reward. And you have to somehow make the work itself the reward. Because if you're relying on stuff around you, there's not enough validation to go around for everybody, let me tell you. And it seems to be that in a commercial sense, people go with well-knowns because they're running a business, and I understand that. But it was still really hard because I thought I was going to get somewhere with this book. So that one didn't fly either. But I went to a Christian Writers Conference in Sydney in 2017. And that was when something began to shift for me. I still had my hopes at that point pinned on this other book that I'd written. But I went to this conference, and it was held at a monastery of all places in the outskirts of Sydney. I don't know Sydney that well. I don't know what direction I drove, have no idea, it was dark. But I think it was like out west somewhere, possibly south a little bit. And there was this beautiful monastery, and we spent the weekend there with Christian creatives. And that did something to my heart. To actually be in a place where not only was I with creatives, but I was with people who were using that in service of something bigger than themselves. And part of that journey for me was going on a prayer walk, this beautiful prayer garden they had there. And it was a really conscious decision of mine to do that day. And it was actually just before the awards ceremony. And I've got some books out the back today. And one of them, Small and Big, actually won the award that year for Best Picture Book by a Christian author in Australia. Thank you. Which was amazing and very exciting. And I ended up winning the overall Best Author category for all genres that year as well. So that was fabulous. But before that, I walked this prayer garden path. And as I'm walking, I'm going, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just here trying to use what you've given me in service of you. And I don't know what to do. What do you want me to do? Because whatever it is, I'll do it. Do you want me to focus on the local church? Do you want me to teach? What do you want me to do? And I get to the middle of this prayer garden, and there's this beautiful little altar there. And it's designed to just leave all your burdens there. And as I'm really searching and seeking God's heart, he spoke to me in a way that was incredibly powerful. And I actually heard his voice, and that's only happened twice in my life. And this was one of those times. And he said to me, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to be mine. And that is what I wear engraved on my necklace to remind me, because I am a doer. I like to fix problems. I like to make things happen. I like to chase opportunities. But that's not what he called me to do. He called me just to be his. And that night, after I'd won the award and after I was on this absolute high of celebration and affirmation and validation of my writing, I read this from Isaiah 43. But now, says the Lord, the one who created you, Jacob, the one who formed you, Israel, don't fear, For I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When through the rivers, they won't sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you won't be scorched, and flame won't burn you. I held on to that be mine for the next few years. And in a very unlikely chain of events, I got an incredibly public call to study theology. Now, that was not on my plan at all. I'm married to a pastor. Who needs two pastors in the one family? Like, it made no sense whatsoever. And I argued with God. And I went, no way, this is silly. Everyone's going to laugh. I'm laughing. Like, this makes no sense. And yet, that was the call. I could not doubt it, because I said, if this is what you want, God, you're going to have to make it clear. Yeah, it was clear in front of 800 people at Big Camp, when the pastor on stage at the end of his call was doing this really vibrant, passionate call at the end and affirming people and saying, maybe you've been called to step up into local leadership at your local church. Maybe you've been called to start a ministry for the homeless. And he turns around, doesn't know me at all, points at me and said, maybe you've been called to study theology at Avondale. Yeah, so I couldn't argue. So that's what I've done. I'm currently 10 out of 16 subjects through my grad dip in ministry and theology. I've been studying for 3 years while working full-time for 2 with 4 kids and a husband and ministry and all that. And it's been insane, and it makes no sense still. Until I hold up this book. In January this year, Nathan Brown from Science Publishing rang me. And he said, Karen, you know my book Advent? He'd just published that last year at Christmas. Does anyone know the book Advent? It's a brilliant book. If you haven't got it, please get your hands on it. It's a daily chapter for the month of December through the Christmas story like you've never explored it before. Nathan's a smart writer. His word choices are divine, but he's also really accessible. And he takes these beautiful theological concepts and brings them down into a way that suddenly the nativity story that we've all grown up with just bounces off the page. But that was for adults. And he rang me and said, Karen, have a proposition for you. So you notice that I didn't do anything in this process so far. I haven't hustled. I haven't gone and looked for opportunities. I haven't gone knocking on doors. I've clung on to the whole be mine. And that's what I did. For 3 years, I chose to just sit where God had placed me. And yeah, work on my craft. Yeah, keep writing when I could, but trust that being his would be enough. And Nathan rings me and says, we've got an idea. We want to take this Advent book and we want to turn it into a resource for families. And we think you're the person to write it. Are you interested? I didn't have to think about the answer to that question, because of course I was interested. Man, what an amazing thing. So I got to use my passion for kids. I got to use my experience as a teacher and in children's ministries and as a chaplain. I got to use all that writing that I'd done for kids that never saw the light of day and possibly never will. And I got to use my theology degree. And in the middle of all that, in my crazy life, I said to them, they said, can we have it by June 30? And I went, not a chance. I need to wait for that 6-week end of semester break from Avondale. You can have it by the end of July. And they went, yeah, all right. So I thought about it for that first few months of the year. Then as soon as my last exam finished, the end of first semester, I'd already done the groundwork. I'd already read Nathan's work and taken notes, because this is a companion volume, which is why his name's on the cover, because my book is a derivative of his book. I read his book, took notes, looked at themes, and then reworked it for families. And then in 6 weeks, I wrote the 31 chapters of Advent for Kids. Each chapter has a range of elements to it. You have a round table that's designed for use as a family, as a whole, something you can use at the dinner table, family worship, in the car. There's a question, the round table question, and that's something everyone can answer. It's aimed at kids from 5 to 12-year-olds, but I actually think adults, even without kids, could get a blessing out of it, because it takes these deep theological things and it presents them in a way that is accessible to a 5-year-old. Now, if we can't explain our theology, in a way that children understand, then we don't actually understand it either. So this flexed a lot of my writing muscles and my theological growing understanding. And I rang Nathan and said, Nathan, why did you write a whole chapter on the preeminence of Jesus, and how do you expect me to do that for 5-year-olds? And he just went, yeah, that's why we asked you. And we didn't do it. So there are deep things in this. There's the Trinity Explained. And it's been written for an audience that is within the family unit. So you've got the round table question at the start. You've got a remember section, which is a Bible verse. Then you have the read section, which is the story. It's only a couple of hundred words for each day. Then you have a reflect question at the end. What did you learn? What was the highlight? When have you felt that way? And then there's a react section where that's activity-based. And there's a website. If you go to Science Publishing and just Google the book, there's a website with activities that are based around some of the days. So it might be listen to a song, it might be create a Christmas decoration, it might be write a note to someone thanking them for something. And if you want even more resources, and this is where I'm blown away. So here's me, hustled for 15 years to try and make it as a writer, and probably the most number of copies I've ever sold of a book is 1,000. In Australia, that's a good print run, 1,000 books. There were 10,000 pre-orders of this one. Now, I can't believe it. Like, I really can't. I'm constantly going, God, are you sure you know what you're doing? Because it doesn't feel like I deserve it. And the thing is, I don't. But God put me in the place to do something that is going to impact 10,000 families this Christmas. Road to Bethlehem in Victoria are using this book as the foundation of their entire month of December. They're mailing them out to 1,500 families in Victoria who aren't church people, they don't necessarily engage in faith, and yet they're mailing them out. And you can go on, here's a secret for you. If you go to Road to Bethlehem and you sign up, you'll get daily content related to the book. They've created videos and songs and digital content that you'll get just magically in your inbox every day for the month of December. And I just am overwhelmed that my words, that God, well, Nathan's words first, then have become my words, that have then become other people's passions and other people's content creators. And it just has shown me how generous we should be as creatives. That we need to have that generosity of heart and trust that God is going to use us and our commitment and our passion and our skill. But he's going to go ahead and make something 100 times bigger than what we ever imagined. And Sandra, I think you've experienced that with your sing-along. I have family in America who watch it. And I feel that that is such a privilege. It's also a really big responsibility. I said, Nathan, this is my first real theological thing. What if I'm wrong? And he said, just tell him you based it on mine. I said, yep, excellent, great. Perfect answer. But when I look back to that, where God said to me 4 years ago, be mine. Don't do anything. Just be mine. This is my Be Mine book. It's a book of my heart. It's a book of my faith. And I just pray that your family might be able to get your hands on a copy this year. A lot of churches have bought them in bulk to give out. I know we've done that down on the Gold Coast. Our school has I signed 105 copies the other day for the families in our primary school. And that was through our school buying them through the publisher. And we're using it as a real outreach for families. And we're encouraging people to buy one for yourself and buy one to give away. Because it's full of beautiful illustrations, it's a really easy read, and it's something that gets to the real heart of Christmas. So Christmas blessings to you all. And no matter what industry you're in, no matter what kind of creative you are, just remember, be his, and he's got you covered. Thank you.